Hey, now that I have the movie for real, we can finally begin the year right with something really good, in relation to another really good movie that's a sequel to this, Paddington.
I had to laugh till I couldn't laugh no more. At an old China man out on the floor. Pass me by, hopping like a clown. I told myself that he really going to talk. But there was also a Roger.
Paddington is based off the Paddington book series that started in 1958 by Michael Bond, and is one of the few examples of a modern film adaptation of an old children's series done right. And without American meddling, looking at you, Dougal. The film was written and directed by Paul King, whose filmography is small but has a history of positive reception, while also being produced by David Heyman, who helped produce the Harry Potter film series. Then, with actor and comedian Hamish McCall as another writer for the film, it certainly felt like this could have some bad repercussions if this did anything to add unnecessary humor to a series featuring a humble-speaking bear. But you'd be surprised, and I'm going to show you just what about this movie is so fantastic that it warrants seeing. So with that, here is Paddington. So we open with a film documentary of some sort, involving a famous explorer named Montgomery Clyde on an expedition to darkest Peru. As dark as Africa doesn't have bears, according to Michael Bond's old agent for his book series. He discovers a new species of bear, and just before he could shoot it for research, he gets saved by one from a possible scorpion attack. They show him their home, and he teaches them about his homeland, as well as the iconic food product, marmalade. This sequence is so British, it's like watching Wallace and Gromit, mixed with characters that would fit into Babar. As he leaves to return to his homeland, he tells them this.
If you ever make it to London, you can be sure of a very warm welcome.
Just be sure to come as soon as possible before people start to become bigoted for whatever reason. Many years later, we're introduced to our title character, voiced by Ben Whishaw. He lives with his adopted relatives, Aunt Lucy and Uncle Pastuzo, both named after Clyde's mother and some random boxer he met in a barn. The sequence gives you a general idea on what the characters are like Paddington being very energetic but is also a bit of a klutz, while his uncle loves marmalade, though is a bit protective of his hat.
A wise bear always keeps a marmalade sandwich in his hat in case of emergency.
And that too. And Aunt Lucy, who despite keeping down the rush, tends to provide her own witty, speedy retorts. It also shows how smart they are with their jungle tech, and even when humor is presented, it's not done over-dramatically to where it's obnoxious. The film is very wholesome, and like a lot of Armand films, they know just the right amount of humor to use. In just 5 minutes, you come to really like these characters because they're just so damn fun to watch. No need for cynicism or anything, just some talking bears learning to be like the people of London. Unfortunately, something bad is about to happen as an earthquake hits.
On Lucy, keep going! You all right? Uncle Pastuzo! Uncle Pastuzo!
Now, in the book, Uncle Pastuzo was known to travel a lot, and I assume he made frequent appearances throughout the book series. So, what happens in this movie? Yep, they kill him off. Now, usually a big change like this would be worrisome to fans of any original work. But as long as they're able to utilize the changes well and within reason, they can generally be overlooked. In this case, it gives us a reason to why Lucy had Paddington go to London without her, since the reason didn't exist in the books. As here, she's emotionally heartbroken, and too old at this point to want to make the journey anyway. So instead, she leaves Paddington with some reassurance for in case no one likes him.
And unknown families took them in and loved them like their own. They will not have forgotten how to treat a stranger.
Now, of course, it doesn't change the fact we only knew the aunt and uncle for a short time, and then this happens. But it's fine, as it acts as a drive for our main character to try and carry out their dreams and everything they taught him. The latter especially that will come into play next movie. And so, as Lucy goes off to the home for retired bears, yes, really, Paddington sets sail for London, going through all of his marmalade in the process. After sneaking out through the mail, he soon arrives at Paddington Station, where no one seems bothered by the walking, talking bear. I mean, seriously, no one notices him? They'd have to look down at some point. Late night train shows up as he's starting to give up, and one last family walks by.
Keep your eyes down, there's some sort of bear over there, probably selling something.
Good evening.
No, thank you.
Oh dear.
Well, at least they reacted to the bear.
Hello there.
Mary.
Oh, hello. Coming down in stair rods.
I hope you don't mind me asking, but shouldn't you be at home?
Oh yes, I should. But I haven't quite worked out how to find one.
Well, where are your parents?
Oh, they died when I was small.
Here we go.
All I have left is my aunt.
And where's she?
Darkest Peru, in the home for retired bears.
Yeah, of course she is.
How did you get here?
I stowed away in a lifeboat.
Cool.
So now's a good time to talk about the Brown family, as like in the books, they are his would-be adopted family. We have Mary, played by Sally Hawkins, who we learn is a story illustrator and likes to do some adventurous things like...
You jumped in the lake.
It's a Victorian bathing pond, darling. It's what you're supposed to do.
Not naked.
And that's the closest this movie will get to foreshadowing her role in Shape of Water. There's also Judy, played by Madeline Harris, the eldest sibling who seems to seclude herself from family and strangers, like most high schoolers do. Jonathan, played by Samuel Jocelyn, who is like every young boy who likes to do dangerous things.
1.
And is now only allowed to play with safe, educational indoor toys.
And then there's Henry, played by Hugh Bonneville, and possibly my favorite human character in this movie. He's a risk analyst who spends his life worrying and trying to prevent accidents from happening, which tends to make him paranoid. Yet given the performance and the dialogue present, he makes for a very entertaining individual of this archetype, and one who is very funny for someone so restrained. You'll see why in a bit. So since Paddington doesn't have a real name outside of Snarling...
You try it. Mr. Brown, that is extremely rude.
Okay. I'll try not to show all of the funny parts of this movie. Otherwise we'd be here all day. They decide to give him the name of Paddington, after the station they found him at. In addition, they convince Henry to let him stay for at least one night until they can find someone to look after him. After a short driving montage, with music provided by one of this film series' running gags, they arrive at the Brown household, where he comes under the false impression he's going to be living here. But they try to explain to him about the best thing they'll do for him.
Not an orphanage. It would be more like an institution for young souls whose parents have, sadly, passed on.
I said don't show all the funny stuff. He thinks of finding the explorer who visited them, but none of his previous guardians knew his real name. But for now, it's time for that scene. If you recall, this was one of the first scenes they showed in the trailers in the US, and well... Let's just say that given films like Alvin and the Chipmunks, it was understandable to think this would be nothing more but lame gags and gross-out humor. Thankfully, this is the only instance of such a thing, and once you know the full context of the scene, it actually makes it more... bearable? By now we know Paddington is a good character, who's easily excited and well-mannered, but also naive to the point where he doesn't know much about human commodities. So for him to be sprucing up like this, it's pretty funny. The scene is made even more hilarious by the fact that Henry is scared that something bad will happen and is contacting his insurance company about how this will affect him. We know what's coming. Something bad will happen, and it's leading to the most suitable reaction.
Oh no.
So simple, and yet it's actually perfect given his character. Most characters like him would be yelling non-stop, but he's a bit more reserved. Most of his reactions aren't ear-splitting, you know?
Nice weather for the ducks. Oh.
That was amazing.
Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk editing. As you may have seen, the film likes to cut away to some visual aids during certain moments, often as a way to complement the surreality of there being a talking bear while also having the effect of being like a storybook. It also has the same effect of playing like a live-action version of cartoons like Babar, or maybe even one of the Paddington cartoons, where the world is fictional and like a laid-back cartoon. But then you get moments like this that have more of a whimsical feel to it, that also aid in explaining how characters act. The way the Browns' home is set up like a dollhouse to show what everyone is doing at the same time is done in a well-edited manner, and the way Paddington describes their interests, based on what he perceives them to be, is rather cute. Speaking of the scene, you could almost see this as a case of how people perceive a place for being so wonderful sounding, only to be hit with reality that it isn't quite so. Add to the fact that he's more or less a foreigner, that it makes him very relatable to those who find themselves isolated from society for one reason or another. It makes you want to see things get better for him, and you just know hope is in the form of the family he's staying with right now. Despite the fact that Henry wants to take Paddington to the authorities, Mary decides she wants to take him to see a friend who might know something about the explorer, and he happens to live on
Portobello Road, Portobello Road, street where the riches of ages are stowed.
But first, it's time to meet our main antagonist, Millicent, played by Nicole Kidman. She runs a museum, but also has a hobby in taxidermy. See here, all the mounted heads on her walls, but have full bodies on the other side. I'd argue that she is the closest thing to being an out-of-place character because of how dark and serious she sounds.
You are going to make a fantastic addition to the collection.
Aren't you worried people are going to ask questions?
Not at all. As far as the tree huggers who run this place are concerned, I'd never dream of stuffing a poor, defenseless animal.
But given how the Babar cartoon had implications of death, this wouldn't really surprise me as far as an updated take on a children's book series is concerned. Also, given what we learn later, her doing stuff like this,
Trace, not trace.
perfectly reasonable for the setting she's in. Anyway, earlier she was told about a strange animal that showed up on a ship, so she decided to go investigate as she seems to know who and what it was and is determined to capture him at any cost. Before we finally get to
Portobello Road.
No, we have to meet our secondary antagonist, Mr. Curry. He's played by the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, and like in the book, he has it out against Paddington, though in the films, they portray him as sort of a xenophobe.
I'm from darkest Peru.
Don't worry, Mr. Curry, he's going.
Just as well. Don't want to be kept up by any of your loud jungle music.
Now see, he's the kind of person who likely voted for Brex anyway. Portobello Road time! Here we meet Mr. Gruber, another character from the book who's played by Jim Broadbent, who, like in the books, becomes Paddington's best friend. The main reason being that he relates to Paddington in similar manner to how I described them earlier.
When I was not much older than you are now.
Was it hard to find a home?
I had a red aunt who took me in. But I soon learned a home is more than a roof over your head. My body had traveled very fast, but my heart, she took a little longer to arrive.
Now, given how his shop is set up, he could have easily been changed to be more eccentric and pulling jokes constantly. But no, not here. He gets to the point of him connecting with Paddington, and the analogy they went with was well done. At any rate, as he investigates the hat, Paddington notices a pickpocket. Only he doesn't realize he's a pickpocket, because he assumes he just dropped his wallet and goes after him to return it, but...
Some kind of tiny police bear.
Now, to my understanding, in all interpretations of Paddington, he had plenty of misadventures caused through misunderstandings and accidents. Well, I can see this being one of them. This is very cartoon-like, but one more expected of modern times. And thanks to these special effects, they're able to pull off some cool action sequences without it looking too bad. Though I will say, come next movie, you'll find the effects improved greatly. So he captures the pickpocket and is hailed a hero. Gruber finds out the explorer comes from the Explorers Guild and says to go there to find their explorer. Of course, Henry doesn't buy into Paddington's story still and is pretty set to take him to the authorities. The kids seem to like him at least. They find Dad to be boring, but Mrs. Bird, their housekeeper I didn't mention till now, says otherwise.
Met him, he was a very different man.
Not gonna let this change us, right?
No way, baby!
But becoming a father does strange things to a man.
Could you be careful? There's a baby here. Could you step back? There's a baby coming through. Could you keep those flowers away, please? She's too young for pollen.
I always knew hospitals had a way of converting you, but once Henry sees the kids having fun with Paddington, while also giving him his signature blue coat, he decides he'll try one more time to help him by going with him to the guild. But of course, Millicent is on the verge of tracking him down by torturing the cab driver from before.
Where did you take the bear?
Windsor Gardens.
Thank you.
I wouldn't go up the West Way this time of night, love. You want to go north?
Did she just murder him? I'm pretty sure he's still tied up, so he can't get out. And it's followed up by something funny.
Telephone box.
I'm terribly sorry.
Hello? Is it me you're looking for? I can see.
No problem.
I guess this is what they call dark humor. Hey, that woman murdered someone! And now this guy is in love with her! Funny! We then arrive at the Explorers Guild, which looks elaborate enough to be in a fantasy setting. They try asking about any explorers who went to darkest Peru, but they say they never have. It's at this point Paddington takes an elevator, getting Henry to come with him, because it's rather suspicious that...
What? Why are you looking at me like that? Is it me or is it hot in here? Why do I feel so...
Uncomfortable. Flushed. Queasy. It's called a hard stare. My aunt taught me to do them when people had forgotten their manners.
This was a thing in the book, so I can't say it's out of character.
Mr. Brown, you can trust me. There really was an explorer. And if we can find him, I know he'll give me a home. A proper home, like yours. Now, I've got an idea.
Well, gee, I wonder where this will lead to. Oh, there he is.
No, that's right. I'm new.
Thought so. Lovely day, innit?
Unusually hot.
Yeah. Just like you.
I shouldn't laugh at this, but yeah, That was pretty funny. Anyway, they sneak into a computer and find at least 200 results for Peru, only to find that the records were destroyed. Paddington does find one small film reel at least, but when they go to return everything else... yeah, that's gonna break everything.
Stop that, sexy woman! Oh!
Ha! Anyway, whimsical moment! Now I see why they got the Harry Potter producer on board. This is pretty wonderful. But now they know Clyde's name, and after a sequence where it looks like Paddington is part of the family, despite leaving him alone for a while, we get more action from Millicent and Curry, who earlier was further showing how much of a bigot he can be.
I suppose I should be grateful that it's only one bear.
Oh, but it always starts with just one, Mr. Curry. Soon the whole street will be crawling with them. Drains clogged with fur, buns thrown at old ladies, raucous all-night picnics.
What can we do?
But Paddington's mishaps keep screwing up their attempts at kidnapping her, and it leads to quite a bit of an explosion. The Browns come home to find their kitchen ruined, and are in disbelief over the story he told. Which, to be fair, coming from a land not inhabited by humans is reasonable enough in why he wouldn't know what a gas mask is and mistake it for an elephant. That and he's a klutz. However, this more or less reignites Henry's fears of him being dangerous, and after overhearing him, he decides he'll leave on his own and not be a bother to them anymore. This leads to some sad bits and an equally sad Brown family, minus Henry.
You just don't get it, do you?
What?
This family needed that wee bear every bit as much as he needed you. There, said my piece.
Paddington goes house to house until at last finding the one belonging to Clyde.
My father is dead.
Oh. Oh dear.
What did you want from him?
He once told my aunt that if ever we came to London, we'd be welcome. And I suppose I hoped he might give me a home.
But I can do that.
What a twist!
That's right, she's Clyde's daughter. And since he never saw what she looked like, this makes the twist more painful since the potential family he was after, and the only thing left is a vengeful daughter.
Like you shouldn't be out on the streets. You belong somewhere very special. And I know just the place.
Her bedroom. No, she takes him to the museum, where she reveals that her father refused to bring back a specimen of the bears he found and was turned away by the guild. Now she wants to capture Paddington so she can become rich and famous herself. You know, they're still going to believe that's just a regular bear cub. What is it with villains and wanting to kill rare animals instead of just leaving them alive and maybe have them reproduce? At any rate, she manages to dart him and gets ready to stuff him. However, way prior to this, she told Curry to screw off since he keeps advancing on her. And out of spite, he decides to tell Henry while disguising the fact that it's him. So he gets the family together to try and rescue him. This is where the film has everyone do something relating to their personality or interests in a way that allows teamwork and some character development. For instance, Judy is now on board with going into the sewers as her mother wanted to go down there with her, because, as it turns out, they connect to everywhere, including the museum. Also, Jonathan reveals to his dad that the lab kit he bought him contains some lethal substances, proving that Henry is an idiot. And Mrs. Bird?
Nip of antifreeze for the old pacemaker.
No, not while I'm on duty.
Oh, too strong for you, huh?
Oh, fighting, so okay. I'll have one.
No, best of three.
Best housekeeper ever. Well, they get inside, shut the power off, and then proceed to sneak inside. However, one of the passages is locked off, so guess who volunteers to go out?
Someone has to. And that someone is me.
And thus Henry regrew his balls. He makes it to Paddington, just now waking up thinking God was talking to him, and apologizes for not believing in him before. Millicent realizes the break-in and puts everyone on lockdown, leading to another chase sequence between her and Paddington. Only one way to get out of this one: use the vacuums for suction and climb the air vent that's also connected to the furnace. This is intense. Nice. But uh-oh, Millicent is here. Now what?
He's family. Family? You're not even the same species.
It's true.
It is true. And when I first met Paddington, I wanted nothing to do with him. But my wonderful wife, she opened her heart to him, and so did my incredible children. And now I have two. It doesn't matter that he comes from the other side of the world, or that he's a different species, or that he has a worrying marmalade habit. We love Paddington, and that makes him family. And families stick together. So if you want him, you'll have to take us all.
Okay, then.
When I say all...
I've never stuffed a human before, but...
Jeez, you're more nuts than the hunter from Babar. And he was willing to burn alive to keep his little war on African animals going. Oh, but the running gag of pigeons comes in handy because he tosses his sandwich at her and...
Nice try, bear.
Dead. Nah, just kidding. So the film starts to wind down with time passing and Paddington writing to Lucy about how all of them have a much better life together for one of the most wholesome endings I've seen in a movie like this.
I will never be like other people, but that's all right. Because I'm a bear. A bear called Paddington.
Come on, Paddington!
I had to laugh till I couldn't laugh no more. At an old China man out on the floor. Pass me by, hopping like a clown. I told myself that he really going. The people going crazy.
So ends one of the best family movies to come out of 2014. And what a movie it is. This right here is how you do an adaptation to a story originally made as lighthearted and full of meaning. This movie takes the heart and soul of the original stories, gives it a new coat of paint, while keeping what made it so good in the first place. Even with an updated style of humor and writing, it manages to complement the characters and how they behave, and how it may have gone back then, which, speaking of, every character has something about them that makes them unique and relatable. Even characters who aren't around long enough get the feeling of wanting as they're so likable, or, especially in the case of antagonists, fun to watch. Nicole Kidman comes off as a bit too serious at times, but it never goes too far. Maybe. But Paddington is of course the biggest pleasure of the movie. Kind-hearted to the max and pleasant to listen to, he's the one character you'd expect to have the most changes, but has much of what his predecessors had. Everything about this movie, from the visual effects, to the writing, to its messages, is near perfect. And it could only get better with its sequel. Being that this was made in the UK, with Studio Canal producing it, and with additional CG effects by Framestore, naturally, the film would have a better marketing campaign in the UK, where it and its sequel would be released first before eventually making it overseas. Being the primary market, naturally their grossings would be far higher than it would be in the US. So what might be seen as a bomb here is not so, because this is a case where you have to consider the country of origin as the main source of its grossings. With a budget of around $50 million US, it made well around 4 times as much back, which pretty much warranted a sequel. Perhaps when that gets released on home video, I'll review that as well, but maybe not. After all, these are pretty awesome films that I don't think I can add more to them than what others may have. So I'll just leave it at that and say, go watch these movies. They represent the kind of film adaptations that can happen even in a time where cynicism tends to dominate over wholesome family movies with legitimate writing, worthy of praise and love. I'm the Media Hunter, media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.